Thank you for joining me. This week we study the collect for the third Sunday of Advent, and I never cease to be amazed at the authors of the propers of the Mass. Some people have not appreciated the newest translation of the Roman Missal, but I find the language fascinating. And at first, this week's prayer seemed fluffy, but like always, there's so much more to find. And I guess that's why I call it Lectio, the liturgy. O God, who see how your people faithfully await the feast of the Lord's Nativity, enable us, we pray, to attain the joys of so great a salvation and to celebrate them always with solemn worship and glad rejoicing. This week I studied the verb enable. In the Latin form of this prayer, enable means to bring to bear, to fulfill, or to make good. It means to enable someone to do something or to make something possible. To ask God to enable us does not mean that we ask God to shift us into drive and hit the gas, but it does mean that God gives us the opportunities and He gives us the grace to do what He has called us to do. God enabled Mary to be the mother of the Son, and that Son, Jesus, enabled us to attain salvation. God becoming man to save us from sin is truly the meaning of the Lord's Nativity, and that should be the reason we celebrate Christmas. But what does rejoicing and worship look like? Because when we mention praise and worship, sometimes people become afraid. What if somebody looks to heaven and raises their hands? That could be terrifying. But worship is defined as an act of reverence toward God, and worship can take many forms. As Catholics, we can worship in the liturgy. We can worship in our personal prayer. We can worship with holy reading when we read good books. We worship God when we surrender to Him, and we worship God when we trust Him. We also worship God when we serve Him. In every act of worship I could think of, I found a common denominator, and it is the most important thing we can do. Want to know what it is? The highest form of worship is when you and I strive to become the person that God created us to be. When I work to become the person that God created me to be, I pray, I serve, I study, I learn, I grow, and I become more like Christ. This week, make a list of what Christmas really means to you, and where do you rank forgiveness of sins on your list? What one act of worship can you add to your life to become the person that God has created you to be? Thank you for praying with me.